They were, the college students were up there at Beaumont. They were up there Sunday night, not Saturday.
I was there at 5 something, they were there.
On Sunday?
Yeah. Because that's where.
What time were you up there? On Sunday?
I
Yeah.
don't know where he was, he's not. He didn't do it.
What's he even doing in the city?
Was it, that parking?
Yeah, yeah.
I was there at like 5 something, maybe they just came right after I left.
I don't know.
I mean, I didn't go far, but I was driving by.
Weird.
Okay, we're on. Sorry.
That's cool. Because we were wondering, we were like, where'd you go?
Call the November meeting of the infrastructure committee meeting. Committee to order. Well, we'll call members, Council Canales, Council Kelly, Council Moore, Mayor Roscoe. This time, let's take a motion to approve the minutes of the October infrastructure committee meeting.
Move.
Moved by Mayor Rosquist, second by Council Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, moving on, number 2, community development. We have draft resolution approval of revolving bridge loan request for downtown grant program project.
Make a motion.
Motion by
Second.
Request, second by Council Canales.
This is a this is a bridge loan to Mr. O'Hara, who has a already approved downtown grant program grant funding for his location at 47 Clinton Street. He is asking that the city provide a small bridge loan in the amount just under $100,000 to do the work. As per the DGP, that was a caveat that the applicant could gain access to some of our low interest funding through the city in the hopes that it would carry them through until their grant was then paid for that amount.
So is this, this is the place right across the street from Island Vibes.
From where?
Island Vibes.
No, this is further down the street. This place that you're speaking of, I believe, is 19 Clinton Street, the white facade that is getting work done on it right now.
Mhm.
That is also part of the DGP
Okay,
as well. But we're talking about a property that's a little bit further down the street on Clinton.
Oh, not related to this, but so they are finally working on that other building?
That is being worked on as we speak. Yes.
Yeah.
If you do go down Clinton, there's a scissor lift up there, and there's some facade work that's being done on that building.
very nice.
Is there any further discussion on this one? If not, all please signify by saying aye.
All right.
All right,
Aye. All opposed, motion is carried. Discussion Margaret Street Improvement Project. Community development.
Yeah. So when's the public session?
It's Tuesday, November 9th, 6 o'clock at Grant Theater.
So as discussed and presented to this committee, there is a infrastructure project on Margaret Street, Margaret, Frankerhoff, and Court Streets that is going to highlight a number of much needed infrastructure improvements on Margaret Street, specifically speaking to the 1900s, very early 1900 infrastructure that is under that street, in combination with the need to improve that infrastructure and replace it, comes with the I will not mix words here, the major upset that will bring to downtown business and flow. We are looking at a project similar to Main Street, Lake Placid. If you have yet to be out there, I certainly would encourage you to go to downtown Main Street, Lake Placid, to get a good understanding of the scope of work that we're talking about. So in all sensitivity to that interruption, we have a public meeting with some of the more directly impacted stakeholders, business owners, some residents, the property owners on Margaret Street to have a public conversation for what we're doing, why we're doing it, certainly starting to more of that community engagement so that people can be made aware and engaged during this process. Tuesday, November 9th at 6 p.m. at the Strand. We've invited those folks to come and speak to us so that we can also present to them what our thinking is on the scope of the project and timeline of the project, specifically to specifically to Margaret Street. Brinkerhoff and Court's going to be a little bit different, not as heavy-handed as the Margaret Street project, but nonetheless, it will be an interruption. And so we really do want to get ahead of the curve on this and make sure that people are aware of it and they're engaged and they have a mechanism for feedback to the city of Plattsburgh.
Very good. What's the timeline on this, Chris, other than that?
That's it.
Are they gonna be getting back to us this following summer to tell us?
The whole idea right now is timeline wise, it'd be ideal if we could start in the next construction cycle next year. Obviously, we've got to talk about the scope of the project as well as funding for the project. When we look at something like Kogan, which was a full depth reconstruction and paving and sidewalks, it may be comparable, but we're also looking at full depth reconstruction with new roadway on Beekman, which is about 4 times the length of this, I would imagine. I'm estimating similar project in the sense of full depth reconstruction, replacing very old infrastructure as the primary purpose for why we're doing this, with a different road design on top of that. Again, starting next year, ideally, is the ideal timeline. We are looking at a 2-year construction cycle at the minimum. But that's kind of the approach on this one. We won't really know a solid timeline until we get all of our infrastructure mapped, the design and engineering plans completed, and then bid out for construction and the cost. But that's the loose timeline that we've been kicking around internally. But again, until we get the actual design and engineering plans done, it's hard to say. Going into that is this level of community engagement, which I feel is real key for the community, real key for the city, especially coming off of a fairly contentious project launch, unfortunately. And so we just want to try to avoid some of that contention up front.
Anyone else have any other questions? No? Okay, very good. Okay, moving on to Public Works draft resolution, authorized refuse collection and special pickup charges. Motion by Canals, second by Kelly. Discussion?
As right now, the city picks up, it's a special pickup, and right now the city charges $25 for a small load, essentially a 1-ton or a pickup. Is it the 1-ton 25?
That's actually a half-ton pickup size.
Half-ton, yep.
We do 25. Typically a single item, like a mattress, a water heater, something of that nature, would be the $25 pickup.
Mhm.
The $75 charge is a 1-ton dump load, so a small tank for a dual rear wheel truck.
That's the price now. What we're asking is that this special pickup fee is increased by $5.
Well, that and also Richard had pointed this out. Richard pointed it out at
to me that we never formally had the $25 fee put in as a resolution. 75 was in the previous fee schedule, the 25 wasn't. We could not find out where it was, so to formalize it, Rich asked to get this on the agenda.
So it is 25 for the small load.
25 and 75 if you're a city refuse customer, and I believe it's 30 and 80 if you're a non-refuse customer.
Was there some reason we put that 25 cents on the end?
That again was a carryover from what we had. Honestly, these are old fees, and I was actually trying to get to the bottom of just a $25 charge. And figure out how we got there. I could not find it. We did some analysis, and at this point in time, it's a fair charge for what we're doing for a single item pickup. We should review it, at least buy it, every other year, just like along with our refuse fees. I know we increased those, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, a little bit, and we should definitely try to stay with the market.
So this is just formalizing.
It's just formalizing this, sir.
Yeah, 'cause I know I utilized this one time, and I think this is what we paid.
It's
What's the $25?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, a mattress. Who likes to get rid of a big mattress? I mean, it's nothing better than pay someone $25 come to your house, pick up a mattress. I mean,
I used it earlier this year too, cleaning out brush, and I had just a big pile of brush. I was like, I could borrow a truck, or I can call these guys and they can come pick it up for $75. So way more convenient.
Anyone else have any questions on this? If not, all in favor of moving this to the regular agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, move to the regular agenda. Okay, draft resolution, authorized budget transfer. Well, I guess I'm not gonna read, because you got all that, but, entertaining motion.
I'll make that
to,
motion, please.
Second.
Motion by the Rosenquist, second by Councilor Canales. Discussion on this, I was wondering where this came out.
Yeah, so this was a judgment filed against the city for a trip and fall on the newly paved Terry Gordon bike path. Right after it got paved, there was about a 5.5, 6 inch ledge before it was filled back in. A runner was running on the bike path, fell off the edge, broke or twisted her ankle, which resulted in a judgment against the city for this amount. It was sent over to our carrier, who, as most of you know, has the authority to settle without confirmation or approval from the city. They opted to settle for this amount. And this is the amount that the city's on the hook for to pay out. Unfortunately, when we go back and forth and look at the project work, that project work was completed by New York State. We did not complete that work. And so rather than trying to track down the contractor who completed the work to look at their contract and their liabilities, we figured that it would just be more appropriate to pay out.
Any other discussion?
Well, the total is $37,000.
No, the total is 18.5.
Okay.
Yep.
And moving money from the general fund, appropriated fund balance.
Correct,
To judgments and claims.
correct.
Who did that work
We did what work?
on the Terry Gordon bike path?
I believe New York State DOT did it and part of the New York State Empire State Trail. The big bike path trail that they promoted. And so most likely a subcontractor located here. I don't know if they actually did the work themselves.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of moving this to the regular agenda, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, this item will be moved to the regular agenda. Okay, various project updates. I guess we have a lot to talk about there.
We'll give you a quick rundown. In progress, obviously Cogan Ave. We're gonna come back to Cogan. Andrew will give you a little more detailed update on that one, but we'll start with Riley Ave. Today we made the final tie-in, turn the water on for the water line replacement. They'll finish sub-base tomorrow and paving is scheduled for the end of the week. And that should tie up the Riley Ave project. Project you probably didn't realize we're doing, DPW heating system replacement. We had put in earlier for replacing the heat plants in both our main building and our MEO building. The heat plant in the main building is probably about 90% completion. We anticipate firing the boiler probably mid next week, Wednesday. That's the good news. Bad news is the heating devices for the MEO building still have not arrived yet. We did pre-purchase them. We're limping along on the old system. Hopefully we get them in time. We'll just have to play it by ear there. So that's what's going on as far as in progress contract work. Next line down is design work. A lot of this is what Andrew's been up to. New York water line. He's, I think, completed the base map, South Peru Street. And that would be from DOT all the way to the Y with US Ave. Water line replacement there. I think he's also working on the base map. Maryland Road, we have not started yet, but the field survey point's been taken. And then Beekman Street reconstruction, that is a subcontracted design, and someone's working on that currently.
I'm
RMS.
sure hoping we don't run into big boulders like I saw turn up.
The next phase, there will be some test boring through there. So they will go through, I'm assuming next spring. Well, to be honest, they can do it in the winter time. It doesn't really matter when they're drilling. So they'll drill. We know we're going to find ledge in front of the hospital. Where you see water running from the pond, typically there's a theory it's either the pond or it's groundwater running off that ledge there. It's probably a little bit of both. That's something that will be addressed. But yeah, we hope that we don't run into anything ugly. So hopefully the drilling yields something. Projects out to bid, the PSAP grant. This is one that we've lost sight of. We did put it out to bid this spring. The prices came back in too high. It's going to go back out to bid in the next couple of weeks here. Hopefully we get something decent back with pricing and we'll have a project going on right in the spring. And then lastly, DPW operational. These are the things we're doing right now. The Sailors Beach Bridge, we did replace the deck. We're successful. That's back open. City Marina has been put away for the winter. The only launch that is currently open is Wilcox, and we'll be pulling those very shortly. The mayor and I will discuss how long he wants to leave those in the water. Park and path work. We obviously were very short staffed this year. There's a lot of brush clearing that needs to go on. So all the bike paths, the perimeters of the parks are currently cutting them back, mowing them back, trying to get caught up on some stuff now that things have slowed down a little bit for us. Asphalt patching. Now is the time when we run around and any potholes that we can possibly patch while the plant is still open. That's what we're up to. Yard waste. That I think is going very well. We switched over to the biodegradable bags. It's definitely made the process a lot quicker. The guys are really appreciative of everyone getting behind it. We still have some people that are a little bit upset, but I think the complaints have actually even quieted down. But it's a much more efficient process of picking and going as opposed to having to open every bag and separate. The North Bathhouse, we're looking at demoing that. I'm going to say possibly as soon as the end of next week. We built an access road back to it. This is at the beach. The contractor, once he finishes up the job he's on, will be there, but the city is prepared and he will execute that as soon as he gets there. We are clearing currently in the old city dump some paths to get in a track drill to do some test drilling for community development for one of their projects. We'll finish in a couple of days there. Also cleaning up our right of way, or I say our right of way, it's our property, but there's a sewer main that runs from the crate parking lot down to the Bicycle Motion Creek. So we're clearing that out while we're at it. So killing two birds with one stone, along with getting the fence line along the Karen Flurry bike path cleaned up. And then the last thing we did is we removed the parklets. So everyone was very cooperative. We pulled that off and day and a half, and now it's just a matter of trying to get all the leaves swept up. Any question on those items in particular, or any other items?
I think you jumped over the concept of Margaret Street and Bridge.
Yeah, we put them down there. Margaret Street, obviously the mayor covered that pretty well. Those are things we're all gonna be involved in. Public Works, from the utility standpoint, will be available to offer any insight we have. Like the mayor alluded to, there, I think 1903 is a water line and sewer line in that area. Storm drainage, I don't know if we have a vintage on it. Nothing on storm. And then the Bridge New York grant, we're hoping to hear something from them shortly, but that is the Smithweed Bridge over here. This is the first time we've attempted any sort of to get a Bridge New York grant, and hoping that, being that we haven't before, and that bridge definitely qualifies. I think it's a 90% match or 90% pay, and we have to do 10. So that would be good to have.
Yeah, it's developed a few cracks in it.
Just a few.
If there's no more questions, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew. He's going to give you a detailed update on Kogan Ave, where we're at with it. Any other questions? I'll get you in.
So, got a quick little handout to you guys. Basically, the cover sheet is Beth, I'm gonna give you a few copies so you can stick these in the other counselors' mailboxes. The cover sheet is kind of a reference as far as to how the design concept was come up. There's been some questions as far as, I guess there's some constituents saying that we didn't stick with the original agreed upon design, which isn't true. So this kind of breaks down how we came up with that design, gives you dates of when everything was presented at the meeting. So if you guys get questions from constituents, you can reference back to this to kind of explain it. The most important thing is we'll kind of touch a little bit more. Option 5A is what was agreed upon. So basically what that is sidewalks on both sides of the street. They're 4-foot wide sidewalks. There's a 2-foot green space area between the curb and the sidewalk. You've got an 8-foot drive lane on the east side of the road, or a parking lane on the east side of the road, and then 2 11-foot drive lanes. So that was the original concept that everybody had agreed upon, and that's what was turned over to the design engineer when they started doing their design. The second page, I know some counselors have had some questions as far as some issues on the project. So I kind of broke everything down into the 4 major issues that we've had with the project. The first one is driveway slopes. So because we widened the road out a little bit to add sidewalks to the project, what happened was that changed the grade of some of the driveways. So they were a little bit steeper than what they were originally. So to change that, we actually cut back the driveways up a little bit further to take the steepness out. So that one was solved. I had actually talked to a lot of the constituents who had those issues, and they seemed to be pretty happy after we solved that problem. The big one that we've had a couple people comment on right now is the narrowness as you approach Cornelia Street. So what we've got now is 22 foot wide from face of curb to face of curb. So what that is that's a carry through from the rest of the project. So what was approved was 22 foot total, 11 foot drive lanes each to add up to the 22 feet. So a couple other reasons why we had to keep that narrow. You now have sidewalks that go across Kogan Avenue and then cut across Route 3. So we had to have room for the sidewalks, the landings, the push buttons, because everything's ADA compliant now. The other issue is if we widen those out, that would have eliminated the parking for both the Aaron's Plaza and the Domino's Plaza. So you basically take a plaza like the Domino's Plaza, and if you eliminate all that parking in front of the building, you're essentially eliminating all of those businesses' parking spaces. Sure. So we kind of had to keep it that 22 feet so we could keep all of that. So to kind of help alleviate that issue, a lot of it is a perception. They had cones that are stacked outside of that curbing because construction is still going on. So what happens is the cars tend to shift to the middle of the road right now. Once those cones are gone, they can hug the curb a little bit more. The other thing we're gonna do is the stop bar. We're gonna push that about 5 feet back and put a no right-hand turn on red. So the cars will stop back further, and anybody making a right-hand turn onto Cogan Avenue will have sufficient turning radius because the car will be pushed back further. There's no traffic loops in there. It's all RFI or microwave. Basically, it's a little camera that sits up top to sense the car when it's on the road. So we don't have to worry about traffic loops and making sure the car's hitting the traffic loops. So that kind of takes care of that problem. There are tractor trailers that do deliveries to those plazas. I have watched one of them physically make a right-hand turn through that, so I know that it's possible. But what they're actually doing now is they're going up to Churchill Street and coming down through the Aldi's, and then they're coming straight through. So they've actually figured it out on their own. So it's not really an issue anymore. Paving, I know there was a complaint from a constituent about paving not being completed. Mainline paving is actually being wrapped up as we speak right now. They'll come back tomorrow, do the intersections and the rest of the parking aisles on the side. Delaying the materials. So we have granted Luck Brothers a 30-day extension on the project. So we have 3 areas where we've had to delay in materials that's, unforeseen. Really, there's nothing the contractor can do about it. Signage, signal work, and striping. Signage, subcontractors waiting on hardware. That should be here this week. They're coming next week to install. Same thing for signal work. So that should be all wrapped up within the next couple of weeks. The big one is striping. So epoxy is really hard to get a hold of right now. So what they are doing is we were told today that they're approximately a 2-week lead time. The problem we're going to have is temperatures aren't really going to be conducive to putting striping down. So more than likely what we're going to do is we're going to do the stop bars and crosswalks because those are the most important. We're going to do those in probably a latex paint for this year. And then come springtime, the striping contractor will come back and they'll lay all of your center lines and parking stripes. And then they'll redo the crosswalks and the stop bars and the epoxy paint for the contract. So that's pretty much, we're wrapping up here and we'll be done very shortly. Are there any questions?
Well, I had a couple of comments. One, I think that's going to be very difficult to turn into. I know I liken it to turning off Oak Street onto Elm Street. It's very tight there. If you got a larger vehicle or whatever, I mean, we'll see, time will.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why we push the stop bar back. So essentially, you will not have a vehicle parked in between that 22 foot of the curb. So the stop bar will actually be back behind the curb now. So you'll have that full area to make a right-hand turn. So I actually had the issue on Saturday. We drove down through there. There was a vehicle parked there. I have a full-size van and it was a full-size truck there. I was able to make the turn, but like you said, it's tight with another vehicle there. There were cones there. So, but if we push that stop bar back, there won't be anybody parked there. So you won't have any issues making the turn anymore.
We're seeing people do that already.
What's that now?
Stopping short.
Yeah, yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
and the reason for the no right hand on red is what's going to happen is they'll stop back there, but then they'll creep up to see if they can make the turn. So by putting that sign there, it'll stop them from creeping up and then allowing somebody to make that.
The other problem I see that's going to be there is, and this is 2020 hindsight. Horses out of the barn now, but probably should have made those medians a little larger because when the plows go through there in the winter, we're going to push the snow all over the sidewalks. And I know it's a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but looking back at it, maybe an extra foot there might have been very valuable.
Yeah, so typically what we do is we actually do a 4-foot median. The issue we had up here is the 2 biggest complaints we had from the property owners was the speed on the roadway, and they didn't want us to take a whole bunch of the front yard. So we compromised and we shrunk that 4 foot down to 2 foot to try to stop the impediment further into the front yards.
You'll regret that this winter, though.
Yes. Yep.
And the other question that somebody posed to me, like, how come we didn't come all the way? And I can see from the pitch that you can't, it's hard to continue that sidewalk there. That would have been very problematic to add it in the final little stretch before Cornelia Street.
Yeah, so what?
People were asking how come it didn't go all the way to the rest of the way.
So because we had to maintain the parking spaces there. So there is going to be a striped basically striped alleyway through there for pedestrians to walk up. But you would have had to keep the sidewalk flush with the asphalt. Concrete tends to be a little bit more expensive than asphalt, so it didn't make any sense to put a concrete sidewalk there if you had to keep it flush. You just do it with concrete and then stripe it.
I understand, it's a pretty problematic area because there's so many, so it's very busy right there.
Yeah.
There's businesses, there's people who try to park there and people want to walk there, so. I don't have any great solution there. It wouldn't work, so anyway.
I believe all.
Anybody else have a question on that?
Council Moore and I took a little field trip up there Saturday, and I noticed that there is no paving on both business properties. Is
Yes.
that because it is on their property and they are responsible?
No, we're actually that's gonna be part of the paving that takes place tomorrow.
Okay.
Yep, so what happens is you do the mainline paving, and then you come back and you do all of the side streets, and then that was a little bit bigger. That was another area where we had cut back a little bit further than we planned to because the slope was so great. So we tried to minimize that slope. So we had cut back a little bit further. So they'll actually make that final pass tomorrow.
There's also one property on the east side of Colton that doesn't seem to be getting a sidewalk. Is that correct?
Yep, so the sidewalk crosses the street before then, because what would have happened is you would end up having two spots where they would have crossed the road. So the design engineer just had the crosswalk go before that drive or before that house to cut across Terrace, to go to across Terrace West.
Do you know how often these painted sidewalks will have to be refreshed in order to keep them?
Epoxy, Mike would have a better idea how long
Typically, we're on
epoxy.
a three-year cycle.
Okay.
Epoxy, but you know, that, the other thing is if it's straight line, we can latex it, we do it yearly. So just like our center lines and our fog lines throughout the city, the hot line truck from the county will hit that for us.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
All things considered, you guys have done a phenomenal job with this.
Thank you. Appreciate
It's
it.
really, really good.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, we're on to environmental. Resolution 4.1, authorizing and establishing capital project, which I'm not going to read all of.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Mayor Rosenquist, second by Councilman Palace. The discussion?
Give you a little explanation on this. All of these resolutions are, except for 4.4, in support of an application we're preparing for the Clean Water Infrastructure Improvement Act. We got an award a couple of years ago for $18.5 million. Some of it's grant, some of it's 0% financing. This is another project that would be a second phase, a different application, which is the upgrade of the wastewater treatment plant's aeration system. The aeration system that we have has been obsolete for probably more than 25 years. We've been bleeding it along, basically because due to low electric costs, there was no financial payback for us to go out and borrow money at full market prices and all that. Now that the grant program's available, it's grant money, hopefully hardship financing, the economics are a lot better. So this first resolution is to establish a capital project in support of this upgrade project if we do get the grant and the financing. So in essence, it is to establish a capital project for $8.5 million with the funding coming from the WIA grant and financing program.
With 25%, correct?
25% grant, the balance, so it's grant and financing. So it's 25% grant. The balance, the 75% that's on the city will also be funded through WIA. And what we got in the past was what they call hardship financing, which was 0% interest loans for 30 years. Hopefully we'll qualify for that again. If we don't, then it's highly likely we qualify for what they call subsidized financing, which is they pay half the interest rate. So you're probably looking at somewhere between 0% if it's hardship or 1.25 to 1.5% of subsidized interest rate.
So I guess my question, since $8.5 million, what exactly are we buying with that? I know we're doing aeration upgrades. Are we buying new blowers, new lines? Could you give me just a little rundown on?
Would you like to see some pictures from Mrs. Carr? See if we can pull it up here. I was hoping somebody would ask them.
Another slideshow now.
Just a few slides. It's from beginning to the left. Want to hear a joke first? Every picture's worth $1.35 million. I didn't bring any videos, seriously. All right, next, please. So we're aeration upgrade. This is the area of the plant. We're talking about these two tanks that we got, aeration tanks. We're going to be installing a new aeration system there. If you go to the next slide, it's the fourth step in the treatment process, is biological pressure. We've got, it's designed to remove the organic material from the wastewater to protect the environment. Basically, it's a tank of really hungry bugs that we call an inventory or a mixed liquor. And what these bugs do is they use all the organic contamination as food. They reproduce, they get bigger, and we remove them from the process stream, and what's left is clean water. Okay, Beth. What we have now are called surface aerators. They're basically big fans stuck down into the water line. Next. This is a picture of one in action. It's a very violent action, uses a lot of power, generates a lot of mist, volatilizes a lot of odors and other things. Next one. It's another picture of surface aerators. So we have 6 of those, and we're going to be converting those to what's called fine bubble diffusion. And it's a series of pipes on the bottom of the floor of the tank that's got diffusers. High pressure air is pumped into this piping system. And the next picture will show you basically thousands and thousands and thousands of these really tiny bubbles now gently cascade up through the bug mix rather than these big surface aerators. So if you go to the last slide, it's a very gentle action what you see on the top. A lot better oxygen transfer, uses a lot less energy, using more efficient process. You don't get all that volatilization of the odor, you don't get the release of any gases, you don't get the mist forming. Jeff, you've asked about noise in the past and expressed a concern about that. You'll barely hear this if you hear it at all. So that noise is going to be eliminated. So it's going to be reducing odors, it's going to be reducing noise, and it's going to not generate all this mist or this aesthetic issue at the same time that we're saving power costs. So thank you, ma'am.
No more catching snowflakes on your car.
Chocolate snowflakes. You weren't expecting that, were you?
No, it's about time we
Yeah.
came into the 21st century.
What was
Yeah.
the electric consumption? You mentioned some numbers today.
Okay, so our budget for electric is about $265,000 for the year. Running some real rough numbers, we'll probably save between $100,000 and $135,000 a year in electrical costs. The electrical load for those surface aerators in non-heating season is about 2/3 of the electricity that we use at the plant. We do have electric heat down there, so 4 or 5 months a year, the electric use goes up due to electric heat, but it's a substantial electric, not just cost savings, but now we're talking less greenhouse gases. So when you start to look at climate change and things like that, it's a benefit. Also opens up a little bit of capacity within the MLD system, transmission and distribution for other electrical uses. Mayor and I were talking earlier about how the way the world seems to be electrifying, whether it's electric cars or electric chainsaws and all that stuff. So I'm anticipating a lot bigger demand on electrical systems, across the country. So, not that this project would solve anybody's electric problem, but it is a step in the right direction.
Also, just there's a local technology company that provides the blowers. Similar machines that I believe that this project would use, so we do have a potential of using a local manufacturer to provide some of the systems that we're talking about. Should be pretty cool.
So where was this blower shed going to be located?
It's hidden, basically. If you want to go, is it easy to go back to the aerial? That second slide. No. Yeah, go to that second slide. Yep. And up to. See where it says new blower building? It's basically tucked in there in between a couple tanks, so you're not going to see it. The blowers are housed inside of an enclosure that's soundproofed. So basically, you're not going to hear it.
Yeah, just one other question down there. I noticed a couple weeks ago, the last day of the farmer's market, there was a pretty big hole.
Yeah, which would be just a little more to the left, right where those, a little more to the right. See where those green trees are?
Yeah.
That's the new disinfection building that's being constructed. So the excavation's been made, the structural fill's been installed, and the floors and footings have been poured. They'll be pouring the concrete walls shortly, and then starting to do the structural steel. I'll try to get it, at least the exterior and roof buttoned up for winter so they can do the inside work through the cold weather.
That were before it goes into the lake, right?
What's that?
The disinfection.
Yeah, so the building all the way to the top, or the tank, what do we call that? The pool, all the way to the top. That's the chlorine contact tank. So this new disinfection building will house two chemicals, sodium hypochlorite, which is high strength bleach. That gets injected in the front of that upper tank to start the disinfection process as the water works its way through that tank. And then right before it gets discharged, we had another chemical called sodium thiosulfate, which takes out any residual chlorine before it goes into the river and then into the lake. So this new disinfection building is going to house both of those chemicals. Right now, the thiosulfate is housed in this crummy looking building, and pumped all the way up there. So it's inefficient. It's a little harder on process control because there's a lag time. But we're also trying to clean up this southern facade here. So that building's going to go. And the hypochlorite that we use for disinfection is housed here. That also has to get pumped all the way up there. So we're going to significantly reduce problems from leaks and things like that, and just have an overall more efficient process.
John, correct me if I'm wrong on this, please, but I understood we had $19.8 million to do upgrades and repairs to this facility.
Okay, the 19.8 is probably from the drinking water system.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this one is close. It's about 18.5. It's in the same neighborhood.
So but this is not all grant funds.
So the 18.5 million, 25% of that is grant, and 75% is 0% interest loans. And there was, I think, $754,000 in a separate grant that came from Empire State Development. So the grant is actually probably closer to 30% when you run the numbers.
Okay, so are we going to bond the 75%?
For that original 18.5 million, that's already bonded.
Okay.
This project I'm talking about is an additional 18.5 or $8.5 million project.
Okay, just to do the things you described.
To do the aeration portion, correct?
Okay.
So now, we're not going to spend any money, obviously, till we know whether we got the grant, we got the financing, and have more conversations. This is, what we're talking about today is setting up the administrative end with the capital project and authorizing everything that needs to be approved in order to make the grant application and the financing application.
Okay, okay.
So this capital project's the administrative end of setting up this project. Then there's a few more resolutions. One of them is a bond resolution, which is for $8.5 million. That's required in order to make the application. So that's a box we check off for the application.
We don't anticipate paying any interest for the money that we borrow. And we pay it back over how many years?
30 years.
30 years.
All right, so on the $8.5 million that we're talking about now, if we are awarded the grant, it's 25%, which is $2,125,000. The balance of that, which would be $6,375,000, will be through state financing. The previous project, we got to 0%. We're hoping we'll get the 0% for this project also. I've got a lot of confidence that we will for a few different reasons. But even if we didn't, it would be a subsidized interest rate, where the state would pay half the interest. So effectively, I mean, they're probably borrowing money at 3% or less. So our interest rate in worst case would be like 1.5.
So are we paying somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 a year for 30 years?
For this project, if it's 0% interest, we're looking at a payment of $212,500. If it's 1.5% interest, it's 50,000 more a year. It's not a huge amount more.
And will the ratepayers see an increase in what they pay for sewer service?
If everything else stays the same, no. I just looked at the most recent AUD, annual update document that the finance department publishes. And if I'm reading it correctly, it looks like our surplus cash flow is approaching $1 million a year. So there's sufficient surplus cash flow to make this bond payment.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah,
And that's with, and I believe that's with the current expense. That's with the current level of expenses, not to mention the 100,000+ savings, the electrical savings on top
Correct,
of
right.
this transition.
Right.
So
So if our bond payments, $213,000 and we save 130 in electric, it's going to be a net of $80,000 a year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, were there any other questions for John on this? Like he said, I think we can move, if we move through these pretty quickly, because they all have to do with the. well, not all-
Okay, yeah, so-
all but one.
so-
They have to do with the financing, creating the bond and all that, so.
Do you want me to jump into 4.3, which is tied into this?
You have to do the roll call.
Oh, sorry. All right.
I think they already did it.
All right. Being no further discussion, all in favor of moving this to the regular agenda, signify by saying aye.
No.
Aye. All opposed, motion is carried. Okay, draft resolution 4.2, authorizing bond issuance to pay for infrastructure improvements. Motion,
second,
Councilor Canales, second by Mayor Rosenquist. Ready? Discussion. If not, all in favor of moving this to a regular agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion is carried. 4.3. Wastewater plant aeration upgrades, clean water. Let's see this. Oh, this is the secret part of it.
Right. So every one of these-
We'll get a motion.
I'll take that. I'll make that.
Second.
Rosenquist, second by Councilor Kelly. On the discussion.
So every one of these applications requires a seeker review. In this case, it's what's called a type 2, which basically means you don't need to do one, because everything we're doing is on the property, meets zoning, or it's inside something that's existing. Typically, all you need to do in this case is fill out a form that says it's type 2, put it in the file. You might correct me if I get this wrong, Dean. But the state really likes to see some kind of resolution from the governing board, even for a type 2 action. So what you're saying is, this is a type 2 action, and no further action is needed when it comes to seeker.
Any further discussion on this one? If not, all in favor of moving this to regular agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the motion is carried. 4.4, authorize submission of water system grant and financing application under Water Infrastructure Improvement Act. This is our
Motion.
water- Motion by Councilor Callis, second by Councilor Kelly.
Okay, now we're switching gears here for a sec to drinking water. So Mike, you mentioned $19.8 million. That was a bond resolution that the council authorized a couple of years ago in support of a drinking water reapplication. We got a grant award on the drinking water side. You can get, they capped the awards at $3 million. Kind of per project. It was $3 million every 5 years that you could get. Well, what happened more recently, last year, was that the state changed that program to allow a $3 million award every year. So what we did was we took our $19.8 million project and divided it into 4 phases. We went back to the Department of Health that regulates the water system, and we went back to Environmental Facilities Corporation, EFC, which provides the grants and funding, and said, hey, we want to break this into 4 successive phases and apply 4 times, 4 successive years for funding. So they approved letting us start phase 1, which is about a little over $5 million project, which is the construction of the production well. That contract that got awarded recently. And phase 1 is also next year going to include some transmission line work and some electrical supply work. What I'm asking for here is to have the approval to submit phase 2 application for another phase. It's a little over $5 million where we could get $3 million worth of grant money. So it's basically all this is authorizing the submission of the grant and financing application under the Water Infrastructure Improvement Act.
Any discussion on that?
Okay.
If not, all in favor of moving this to the regular agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. 4.5 draft resolution, water resource recovery facility aeration system upgrades grant and financing application under Clean Water Infrastructure Improvement Act.
Second.
Motion by Council Canales, second by Mayor Rosequest. All right, any discussion? This is just to apply for the grant and financing application.
Correct.
Is there any further discussion on that? If not, to vote, all in favor of moving this to the regular agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion is carried. That takes care of our old business, new business. Does anybody have any new business for tonight?
I do hope that councilors will be able to make the public meeting on the 9th at the Strand to talk about Margaret Street. It would be very helpful for you all to also hear what constituents are saying, concerns that they have about this project. So I do hope that you all can attend, and I'll ask Beth to send you an invite as well, okay?
A week from tomorrow.
Yes, it's a week from tomorrow.
What time?
It's at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. The other thing is I do want to acknowledge the Strand and thank them for providing the space for us. It was just a simple phone call to them that asked, hey, can we use the space downtown? It made sense rather than trying to find a space and try to pack people in. So I do want to publicly thank them for allowing us to use that space.
Yeah, it's a much better venue. It gets kind of crowded.
It gets crowded in here, and we thought maybe we'll put them upstairs, and it's like, yeah, we don't know how many people are going to come. And, it is open to the public. So, we did extend specific invites to specific stakeholders. But if, people hear about and they want to come, they most certainly are allowed to. We don't lock the doors if you're not on the list, kind of thing. So appreciate it.
It doesn't appear there's any, is there any other new business? If not, it doesn't appear that anyone's here for public comment, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion. Second.
Motion by Mayor Lindquist, second by Rex Alves. All in favor,
Aye.